What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, February 22nd, 2019. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. And it's a busy news day. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And this being Friday, in hour number 3, the lovely Lady Claire will be sitting in with her unique perspective on the world. Well, last night, as forecast, snow fell on the Hollywood Hills. And not just there, other areas around Los Angeles, Malibu, Pasadena, West Hollywood, Northridge, Thousand Oaks, Calabasas. And it's just absolutely amazing here. And of course, the druggies are all running around going, cocaine, it's cocaine from heaven. And Claire and I lived in that part of Los Angeles for like a lot of years. We never saw snow down there. We'd have to go up into the mountains to see the snow. What is really significant about this winter is not how much snow there is, and there's a lot. We'll be talking about that later in the show. It's that it's coming down to lower altitudes. And we're talking about human-caused global warming a little bit later in the program. Let's get down to the trouble spots of the world. El Presidente Guido has signed his first presidential decree to allow aid to come into Venezuela. And this is grandstanding. It's trying to show who is in control of the borders of Venezuela right now. And I think, unfortunately, tragically for the Venezuelan people, the aid is now going to be what everybody's fighting over. And as a matter of fact, our U.S. Special Envoy for Venezuela, the guy who botched the coup d'etat against Hugo Chavez, Elliot Abrams, is going to Colombia to support the aid delivery. Now, again, something you're not being told, but certainly not by the corporate media. Aid is getting into Venezuela. It's coming in from Venezuela's allies. Russia, China, various other organizations, hundreds of tons of it are coming on in. And the issue here is the aid being pushed across the border by the United States, which doesn't make sense because it is the sanctions by the United States that have led to this so-called humanitarian disaster. So it just doesn't make sense that the U.S. would starve the Venezuelans and then offer to send in food as a kind gesture. And what Maduro is clearly worried about is that this so-called U.S. aid is actually supplies for paramilitaries to be used against him. And given U.S. history, that's a perfectly legitimate, valid point of view to have here. So, anyway, President Trump, when he was in Florida, was saying all options are on the table. And if Venezuela's generals persist in their refusal to break with Nicolas Maduro, they could lose everything. And people are asking, is this another example of Yankee bluster and bluff? Because here is the issue. Okay, where does Trump get an authority to launch a war into Venezuela? Remember, under the Constitution, only Congress can declare a war. Now, I'm sure that Congress will go along with that because Congress loves a good war. It always brings defense contracts to their districts, to their states. Moscow, through their foreign ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, stated that the U.S. attempt to force their version of the aid across the border could lead to clashes. And in point of fact, there's already been one report that that's happened. And that would create the pretext for the removal of Maduro from power. And the U.S. is transferring special troops and weapons close to Venezuela. So it's getting really, really tense over there. Now, Max Blumenthal toured a supermarket in Caracas with a video camera. And contrary to the stories of barren shelves and empty bellies in Venezuela, Max Blumenthal found plenty to buy. The shelves were full. They even have craft beer. I guess Blumenthal's into craft beers, that he noticed that. But this idea that Maduro is slowly starving his own people, again, it's more pro-war corporate media lies. And we need to be aware of that. We're probably going to get some phony videos of people who are being injured by, Maduro and the rest of it. But so far right now, the attempt to trigger a color revolution appears to be stalling. The vast majority of the Venezuelan military are standing with Maduro. And maybe it's because they're listening to Guido go on and on about how the Constitution allows him to do what he did. But if you actually read the Venezuelan Constitution, no, it does not. This is an attempted coup, point blank. Don't ever let anybody tell you what the Constitution, our Constitution, does or does not say. You have to read it for yourself. And there's all kinds of places where you can get copies and little pamphlets like this. And it does make for very interesting reading. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Switching on over to Afghanistan, where we have been there for 17 going on 18 years. U.S. policymakers continue to oppose Donald Trump's decision to pull troops out of Afghanistan. And of course, it has to do with that oil pipeline right-of-way that they want to keep on using for a discounted rate, not to mention all the opium flowing out of those Afghan fields into the hands of America's drug lords and pharmaceutical industries. But I repeat myself. So they want to keep that going. 17 years, and they want to keep that going. It's insane. It's utterly, utterly insane. All that money spent, all your money spent, all your kids killed and crippled, and of course the pharmaceutical corporations and the drug lords and the defense contractors are making all kinds of money off of this thing. Over in Syria, there was this operation to destroy Islamic State's final vestige of rule in Iraq and Syria. It hit a temporary snag yesterday as an expected evacuation of the remaining civilians from its last enclave did not go ahead. So the question is, was there some kind of a logistic issue, or is ISIS deciding they're going to just hold them all hostage to hold off some kind of an attack? And again, despite what Trump promised to do, which was withdraw American troops out of Syria, it is now being announced that the U.S. will maintain the presence of a peacekeeping group in Syria from an unspecified period of time, meaning we're not getting that one either. Now, interestingly enough, as you know, some years ago, Iran was able to hack into a U.S. drone that was spying over their territory and trick it into thinking it was landing at its home base when it was landing in Iran. And they grabbed the drone and they reverse engineered it. And apparently they have been improving their technology to interfere with the drones because the Iranian Islamic Revolution Guard Corps penetrated a command center of the U.S. Army and took control of several American unmanned aerial vehicles which were flying over Syria and Iraq. And apparently 7 drones were brought under Iranian control. Their intel was monitored, and basically they could see everything the Army was saying. One of the UAVs was brought down in a desert area 10 kilometers away from its base, and the United States destroyed it with a warplane lest its technology fall into what could be politely termed the wrong hands. Meanwhile, Iran is saying that the United States has mounted a secret program to sabotage Iran's missile program. So it's getting serious over there. German politician Willy Wimmer is out there saying the U.S. is pulling us into an abyss of war in the Middle East. And he's absolutely right. And Wimmer went on to say that basically right now, the U.S. military has taken control of Europe. And he said, we note to our sorrow the fact that our national parliaments and our national governments are no longer in a position to make an independent assessment of other parts of the world or to ask ourselves whether our policies toward other countries can be upheld or have to be changed, because we follow the lines from Washington, sometimes from Paris, in a very bad way. Now, apparently, the U.S. has been mounting all kinds of reconnaissance flights on Crimea using RC-135B reconnaissance aircraft, Global Hawk drones, and apparently they have sent quite a few of these flights toward Crimea. All of them are intercepted and turned back by Russian warplanes. Meanwhile, Poroshenko is actually in the United States. He's in New Jersey right now. He's basically meeting with CIA and other U.S. policymakers to basically decide what's next to happen in Lugansk and Donetsk republics here. Over in Israel, as you know, the Gantz-Lapid parties merged into one, and Likud is now trailing well behind them. And Netanyahu is in a panic because, you know, he's trying to use his office as prime minister to delay or somehow call off his prosecution for corruption. And so Netanyahu is starting to bring other groups into Likud, including some very ultra radical groups, the Kahanists. He's bringing them into the Knesset as part of the Likud. And what this means is the Kahanists will have a seat in the Knesset in the coming election. So basically, Israel's joint list has split into two major election alliances. They're going to duke it out in the elections, and we're going to see what's going to happen. Regardless of what happens, it's going to be bad for Palestine. It's going to be bad for Lebanon. It's going to be bad for Syria. Now, article out of Investment Watch blog, apparently Israel has decided they need to brace for Temple Mount violence. And they may be right because, as you know, there has been a recent escalation in the number of incursions into the Al-Aqsa Mosque by illegal Jewish settlers who will go on in and perform Jewish religious rituals on the premises, which is kind of like spitting in the face of somebody. And this has caused a political rift between Israel and Jordan, who has authority over the Temple Mount. And of course, this would suit Netanyahu just fine if he could kick off a new violent intifada. You know, because killing Palestinians is always good politics in Israel here. Israeli forces continue to use excessive force against peaceful protesters in the Gaza Strip. 119 civilians, including 31 children, 6 women, 2 paramedics, and a journalist, were wounded in the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces conducted 82 incursions into Palestinian communities in the West Bank, 3 other incursions in Jerusalem. 4 civilians, including a journalist, sustained wounds in different incidents in the West Bank. 87 civilians, including 8 children and a woman, were arrested. 33 of them, including 2 children and a woman, were arrested in occupied Jerusalem. Meanwhile, out in the Jordan Valley, which is occupied by Israel, shepherds herding their sheep in the Uja area were chased out of the open pastures by Israeli forces for no apparent reason, according to witnesses. Now, Aref Daregma, a rights activist, told WAFA that soldiers forced the shepherds, who were accompanied in their herding by Solidarity members, out of the pastures and prevented them from herding in the areas, and said this harassment of shepherds has become a daily occurrence in the Jordan Valley, which Israel wants to empty of its Palestinian residents in order to increase the settler population. And a reminder that all of those settlements are illegal under international law. Alrighty. Over in this one area of the West Bank, there was this group called the Hilltop Youth, very, very violent gang of young settlers, were supposedly expelled from the area 14 years ago. Unfortunately, they're now back and attacking Palestinians. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately about revoking citizenship for people who go from the United States or for Great Britain to the Middle East and fight for ISIS. And when they want to come back home, no, you can't do that. You fought under a foreign flag in a foreign land. Then that actually is how you can lose your citizenship here in the United States of America. But apparently, over in the Independent in Great Britain, they're saying, what about fighters who joined the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces? They're still breaking the same rules. They're fighting for a foreign government in a foreign land under a foreign flag. If the people who fought for ISIS should lose their citizenship, so should the ones who fought for the IDF. So you think about that one for a while. Turning on back to Haiti, as you know, there was this incident that happened earlier in the week where a group comprised of former U.S. military veterans and security contractors were detained in Haiti on weapons charges that were brought back to the United States. Now, apparently, their return to the United States was done in cooperation between the Haitian government, which is backed by the United States, and the U.S. government. Now, this latest story is saying that even though they were not charged in Haiti, they have been arrested when they arrived in Miami. Now, that may be just purely for appearance's sake, but it's kind of interesting to say what was going on. I mean, if they were there opposed to the government of Haiti, they would still be in Haiti. So I think they were there to target the leaders of all of these protests all over Haiti against the corruption. And here you have a study in contrasts. You have the United States trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. At the same time, it's trying to keep the government of Haiti from being overthrown itself. So you think about that one for a while here. Story out of Vox.com, and this gets back to a story I reported on yesterday where Trump just took on this very casual attitude. I'm in no rush for North Korea to denuclearize. It's going to happen eventually. Whenever it happens, it'll be fine with me. And according to this article, apparently the U.S. North Korea policy is in total chaos, and I absolutely agree with that. It was a botched idea to begin with, and North Korea is not going to want to give up its nuclear weapons while the United States is invading country after country after country after country after country. The U.S. Air Force is getting ready to request yet more money to purchase F-15X fighter jets from Boeing, increasing its inventory with an upgraded version of the plane it last procured all the way back in 2001. And of course, the Air Force is pursuing fifth-generation fighters from Lockheed Martin, meaning the F-35. Maybe they're starting to lose confidence in the F-35, and that's why they're going back to these upgraded F-15s. Now, here is a very curious article, if you will, and this came out of facti.org. According to U.S. General David Goldfein, who's head of the U.S. Air Force headquarters, the Pentagon is developing a new strategy for waging war against powerful states such as Russia and China, and its main peculiarity will be secret penetration into the depths of the enemy's territories. The essence of the strategy will be to strike at the weak points of the opponent by avoiding confrontation with his strong sides. Has this guy never read Art of War? That's been a feature of war for centuries. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And if you would like to help out Republic Broadcasting, and trust me, they need it, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit card or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. And let me just share with you, it takes a lot to make RBN run. There's the RBN studio itself, which is in Round Rock, Texas, and then of course all of us hosts out here who are flung across the globe, who have to set up studios in our own home. And you know, the equipment wears out. It's not designed to last for very long. Much of it is consumer level or prosumer level, and it does wear out, especially here in Hawaii, where our salt climate makes everything metal behave like it's made out of compressed rust. So please do what you can, and we do appreciate it. The network thanks you. All right, let's turn to our domestic political scene here. There's a lot going on. As you know, the FBI's top lawyer recently went public saying that he thought that Hillary Clinton should have been charged under Title 18 for everything that she was doing with classified documents. And now apparently more and more FBI officials are now going public saying that, yeah, it should have happened. She should have been charged. Well, I have a little newsflash for you, okay? The statute of limitations has not run out. She can be charged. There's no double jeopardy because she was never in court. Indictments could be handed down right the heck now. And I think they should be. And here's the funny thing about the Robert Mueller report. Everybody's starting to hem and haw about it, and it's starting to look like there's nothing in there about Donald Trump. But the rumor mill is saying Mueller just uncovered a ton of hard evidence about crimes committed by the Obama administration. And everybody wants to sit on that. So, now as you know, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders officially threw his hat into the ring for president in 2020 on Tuesday and went out on Twitter and was immediately being trashed. One tweet said, "I can't stop laughing. This is a tremendous gift to the Republican Party." And we have to be very cautious. Are these real people? Because we know that social media is now home to this growing business of astroturfing, which is to simply load up social media with paid operatives who will post a certain point of view that is not necessarily representative of the public at large. This is a good reason why getting back into the art of the conversation and actually interacting directly with human beings might be a good idea, because they can't put like somebody between you and your next door neighbor to filter what's going back and forth. But they certainly can all over social media. Apparently, Bernie Sanders is also under attack because he refuses to denounce Venezuela's Maduro or affirm Guaido as the country's legitimate interim president. And I think certainly in the case of Maduro, the reason that Bernie Sanders is refusing to denounce him as a dictator is that Maduro won his last election last year. The election had international observers, something absent from our midterms, I might add. The observers said it very fair, very transparent, very verifiable. Venezuela's election system is better than the one we have here in the United States of America. Now, Elizabeth Warren is out there and she's making all these promises. She's starting to sound like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's got these programs and plans that, if you think about it, they don't work, because Warren is now out there promoting child care for all. And she says it's going to cost about $70 billion a year, but the math doesn't work out. There are 4 million babies born in the United States every year. That means there are 20 million children under school age who would be enrolled in a national child care program. Now, Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi and Sofia Koropechik, the economists behind Warren's figures, estimate that the cost of each child in the Warren centers, or baby Warrens, would be $14,500. So that works out to $290 billion a year. So Warren's just out there blowing smoke to try and win votes. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And speaking of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she came out with a tweet. She's presenting herself as savvy on social media here. And she claimed in a viral tweet that Republican consultant Josh Holmes helps run a multi-million-dollar operation to have bots accounts manipulate online discourse. There is no evidence to support that claim. She was roundly criticized for it, and eventually she took the tweet down. Little too late, Alexandria. Once it's been on the net, it's there pretty much to stay. Unless you're over at Facebook and Google, and of course they're deleting stuff left and right here. Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris are expressing support for reparations for slavery and saying that, yes, they want to provide reparations for Black Americans affected by slavery. And I'm sorry, we're talking about no Black person in this country has ever been a slave. And they're not disadvantaged because of something that happened, ended over 150 years ago. That's when slavery ended. It's time to get over it, okay? Stop using it for your victim status. This is Democrats trying to buy the Black vote. If you vote for us, we're going to send you money. You know, have you noticed that all of a sudden in our society, being a victim is seen as a social good thing? You know, my victimhood is bigger than your victimhood. Which, that's a very sick situation, I think. Alrighty. And let's see. There we are. Alrighty. Getting onto the Mueller report. Apparently, former CIA Director Clapper was in a CNN interview and basically came on out saying that Mueller's report is going to be quite anticlimactic and not draw any conclusions. And journalists had reported that sources familiar with the investigation had also said exactly the same thing. Now, Attorney General Barr is saying he has not received a copy of the report yet, that the report may not be released for another week. I think they want everybody to forget about it. It's just going to go away, fade off into limbo. Or they're going to need a really big distraction, because ultimately that's what it's going to come on down to. 2 years, $4 million, they drew a blank. But again, they have all this hard evidence about stuff that was being done by other politicians, like that Uranium One deal. And as I mentioned before, they could still bring indictments under Title 18 against Hillary Clinton. The bias right now in the deep state is just absolutely amazing. They hate Trump. He's not one of them. He won't go along. He won't partake. I mean, frankly, with this intense investigation by Mueller, and they didn't find anything, because it wasn't just the collusion. Mueller went on a fishing expedition, and now the Democratic House is doing exactly the same thing. We're going to investigate your finances. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. If they haven't found anything, which tells us that Trump, for the most part, has led a pretty clean life. So let's talk about Jussie Smollett it's still getting a lot of coverage, and it's starting to have some, shall we say, epiphenomena, spin-offs here. But Alan Dershowitz basically came out on the Ingraham angle saying that if the facts are as the police say, there's a potential for a serious crime. And there absolutely is. Now, Smollett turned himself in. He was released on a $100,000 bond for which he only had to pay $10,000. And he's facing a felony charge of disorderly conduct. Now, apparently, the reason the police and the courts have gone along with this is the two Nigerian gentlemen who helped him pull this off are cooperating. They're cooperating witnesses, and they're going to say, yeah, this is exactly what we had. So Smollett, basically, for those of you who are late getting to the game here, Smollett is gay, he's African American, he's an actor on the TV show Empire, and he claimed that two white supporters of Donald Trump attacked him last January 29th. He said they threw a noose around his neck and yelled, "This is MAGA country," and then poured bleach all over him. And of course, the corporate media just ate it up. Oh, this is the story we want. Another way that we can bash Trump and say it's all his fault. Now, needless to say, Jussie Smollett has pled not guilty. And so there's going to be a trial, which will probably get a certain amount of coverage here. And apparently, former Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis has predicted that Smollett's legal team will attack Chicago law enforcement as a tactic to try and beat the felony charge for filing a false police report. They really don't have anything else to go with. So, yeah, they're going to try and smear Chicago's police and say, oh, they only charged him because they're racist and he's a black criminal, and if a white guy had done that, you know, the usual stuff here. Now, word is coming on out that the rest of the cast of Empire are not pleased with what has gone down and how they feel it has damaged the image of their show. They want Smollett fired. Word has already come down from the executive producer that Smollett will not appear in the final two episodes of Empire this season. That's a $130,000 hit on Smollett because he gets paid $65,000 per episode here. And talking about weird, and maybe this is where we got the idea, Jussie Smollett recently hosted an episode on lynching for the documentary series America Divided. This is over on the Epix network, and they have since pulled the episode ever since Smollett was accused of filing a false police report. Anyway, yeah. So, false flags and hoaxes. I think the American people are waking up to the reality. There are a lot of them. It's not just occasional. There are a lot of them. And in this particular case, Smollett overplayed his hand, and it's blown up in his face. He's truly hoisted with his own petard here. And there's another article out here from stationgossip.com. Are liberals, Hollywood celebrities, and the corporate media responsible for fake hate crimes? Well, yeah, because they glamorize them. They give them attention. We saw the similar phenomenon back in the 1990s during the militant feminist period when there was supposedly a rape epidemic in the country, which turned out not to exist. But any woman with a spectacular rape story, she got on Oprah and she got on Donahue and got all kinds of attention. And women were literally being encouraged to come forward with rape stories, even if they were fake. Catherine Comans, the assistant dean of student activity at Vassar, actually wrote in, I think it was a Time magazine article, was quoted in Time magazine, that a false charge of rape was a good experience for a man to go through. I mean, that's how out there it got. And we have seen recently that every time you've got somebody that's out there saying, oh, there's an anti-Semitic this, or an anti-black this, or an anti-gay that, the media's out there saying, oh, yes, we're definitely going to do that. And they are. They're fanning it up. They're absolutely fanning it up. So, again, the realization for the American people, it's not just this one time. It happens a lot. The fact that Jussie Smollett was this star on a TV show is why his denouement is attracting such attention, because most times it just goes away. Let's see. A black man was accused of spray painting graffiti "Trump rules" and "Black bitch" on a car in Philadelphia just hours after Trump's election. The day after Trump was elected, an 18-year-old student at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette claimed to have been robbed by two white men of her wallet and her hijab. She made up the whole thing here. Also, the day after Trump's election, a student at Bowling Green State University in Ohio said 3 white boys wearing Trump T-shirts threw rocks at her and called her racial slurs. But the police determined she made it all up, probably over frustration with friends and families who were Trump supporters. A University of Michigan student falsely claimed that on November 11, 2016, just days after Trump's election, a white man in Ann Arbor threatened to burn her if she didn't remove her hijab. Police determined she made that up as well. Another UM student claimed a white man cut her face with a safety pin. And it was determined she did it to herself, and she was charged and pled guilty to making a false police report. Days after Trump's election, a 20-year-old man admitted he lied when he told Malden, Massachusetts police he was harassed by 2 white men proclaiming, "It's Trump country now." And it goes on and on and on. All right, we're going to take a phone call from, we got, let's see, Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
$65,000 per episode he makes, right?
Yes.
And he pulls this kind of crap. How many people make that in a year?
Oh,
and
yeah, I mean, that's it.
And
apparently he wanted more money, and he figured if he was more famous, he could get more money, because that is, in fact, how it works in Hollywood. If you've got name value, your agent can get more money for you. And, yeah, $65,000 per episode, that's about normal for somebody with some name value. It's sort of middle range. It's not the millions that movie stars get. But again, how hard it must be to struggle along on $65,000 a week.
Or Rachel Maddow's $30,000 a night.
Yeah.
These people still pull these stunts because they're not living in our world. You know, they're in their own tribe. You know, they don't know what it's like. These people might have been born not rich but they don't live in that world anymore. They live in the world of the rich, so they don't look back at the past, I mean, the stunt this dude pulled off, I mean, I'm surprised they're even charging him with anything, because isn't Rahm Emanuel like the mayor of Chicago, and like the chief of police is put in by isn't he a political appointee put in by the mayor? So I'm surprised they charge him with anything.
They did, and I think the reason that they did was because the independent media made this an issue, and they couldn't be seen not to charge him.
Hey, Mike, did you talk about Venezuela yet, about this shooting on some of the civilians?
Well, that's an allegation, but it's not been corroborated. And again, when the U.S. starts up a war, look for there to be a tsunami of lies, hoaxes, and deceptions. So I don't know if that's really what happened. The story is that Maduro's military forces were down in Colombia trying to prevent the U.S. aid from crossing the border, and a civilian group was trying to block their tanks, which is always a reckless thing to do, and that Maduro's forces shot at them. I don't know if it happened or not. We cannot know, because we cannot trust anything coming out of corporate media or the government.
But if these Venezuelan National Guard or so wearing 1980s era uniforms, we're sending infiltrators in there. It's easy to set up a small unit to shoot up the place to make it look like...
There could have been a U.S. sniper there shooting at the civilians. Remember when
Yeah.
what happened in Kiev? They had snipers on the roof just shooting in both directions, get the carnage going.
Yeah, I remember the footage. They were throwing Molotov cocktails on the police, and the police didn't shoot back. But yet they said the government's, subjugating the people. There's that great documentary. I don't know if your listeners watched it. It's like on RT. It's about the Maidan and how it's a very good watch. It's about the Maidan and how it developed and the Orange Revolution. What was that? A Purple Revolution or one of those revolutions that are fomented, by like outside agitators. Remember, the United States wasn't just involved; it was also the NATO and the EU.
Yes,
they were also involved in that. And Mike, one last thing: did you see Putin? He talked around this table, and I don't know if you're good at math or your listeners, but he said if we have a hypersonic Mach 9 missile 200 miles off the shore, say of like the U.S., say Florida, right? What's the time like to get off the toilet?
Yeah, it's very fast, and what he was actually talking about wasn't the speed so much as the range. Basically saying that their currently deployed hypersonic weapon has a 1,000-mile range, and they could be 500 miles off the coast of the United States and still strike targets 500 miles inland. And I'm a little troubled by Putin changing tack and starting to talk tough, but I guess he has come to the realization that trying to be a statesman is just not going to work with the U.S. establishment.
Oh yeah, like we kept saying, he's got to look east. West there's no going back. There's no going back with these people because they'll stab you in the back if you even try to make an attempt. Then they make good. And Germany sees that. That's why they're going along with the Nord Stream 2. Oh, and by the way, Mike, did you see the Poseidon video?
Hang on just a second here.
Okay.
You use too many theys without explaining who they are. Why is Germany going along with the Nord Stream 2?
Well, Nord Stream 2 is because for Germany's energy.
Yeah.
They need for business.
They need that. Yeah, they're not being threatened. Anyway, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Dustin, thank you for the call. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and we're going to go back to the phones to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, happy Friday, Mike. Hey, listen, you remember back in the day when, since you're my age, when Roots came out?
Yes.
Remember that? And it aired, and what 5 or 6 there were riots all over the country as enraged black people seeing this film. And actually, people died. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
And if you remember the show Rosewood, it was a movie about a black town in the Florida Panhandle that was wiped out basically through some atrocity in the 20s by people. Some white woman accused a black guy of raping her, apparently falsely, and they came in and burned down the whole town. But whenever there's these hate hoaxes like that, or even a movie, like Roots or a miniseries, people get hurt. And Jesse Smollett had to know that that's a real possibility. Let alone the fact, what would he have done, Mike, had somebody been arrested for the crime? They had just inadvertently picked up the wrong guy. Jesse Smollett would have been gladly let this guy swing for him.
Yes.
Or, it's just, this guy is horrible. And by the way, when Al Sharpton was never held to account for Tawana Brawley.
Yes.
Nor was Tawana Brawley, right?
Yeah, I remember that one.
And nobody ever, they just let it go, it's just Tawana Brawley and Al Sharpton, but nobody ever held them to account, yet careers were ruined over that.
Yes.
Big-time legal fees over that. Or how about the latest one, the one that remember the Duke lacrosse scene where, just like the Rosewood white woman who claimed she was raped, the black woman who claimed she was raped falsely,
yes,
and almost got these kids ruined their lives. And luckily, they got out of it. Luckily. And nothing ever happened to her, although several years later, she was in prison for second-degree murder. I don't know if you knew that or not, but so she was a crime waiting to happen on a bunch of different levels. But nevertheless, there are real consequences for this stuff. And then, of course, you get the Don Lemons and the people like that who go on, and it just feeds the victimology that's rampant in the black community.
Well, also the gay community. I mean, it's these hoaxes are not confined just to race issues. It's the gay issues. It's all kinds of things. And while Americans are starting to confront the reality of how many of these hoaxes have been exposed, you need to start thinking, how many hoaxes actually succeeded? How much of what I am thinking about the blacks, the gays, women, Muslims, and so forth are based on a fraud that succeeded?
Right. And for instance, in the Al Jazeera thing on the Israeli lobby, when basically they catch these guys, ginning up, swastikas and stuff like that to demonize people.
Yeah.
And nobody's held to account for that either.
No, they aren't. Anyway, listen, we got to do a station identification break. Peter, I'm going to let you go. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back with hour two. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number two. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go back to the phones to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Your last caller was talking about roots. Wasn't Alex Haley made the whole thing up and/or plagiarized a lot of that, didn't he?
I had not heard that.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah. I should have sent you an email before I called in. But anyway, this has been going on for a long time, and then there's another one of these out there things was. The author Harper Lee, she wrote To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah,
it's kind of the other way around, but it's the same. It's the same sort of thing, right? It's it's all lies. And way back in the day, I mean, when I went to high school, that book was required, reading. It probably isn't anymore, obviously, because it has that kind of racist connotation, I would suppose.
Yeah,
but, this has been going on a long time. It's nothing new. We should be used to it, but we're not, because people they always believe certain things that Mike, the world is just not the way we were brought up to think it was.
No, it isn't.
Or is.
Not even close.
It is dirty and it's filthy, and there are a handful of people that are running it and calling the shots. That's, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think in the end, we're going to find out one day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month or next year, that this was actually orchestrated by somebody else. This Jussie Smollett thing.
Well, there is an interesting...
I don't think he's smart enough to come up with it.
Well, I didn't get the impression that he's a dullard. There are some people saying that this may have been intended to create a media firestorm frenzy to distract from the release of the Robert Mueller report, which, who knows? But again, whatever they were trying to do, it's blown up in their faces.
Yeah, it wasn't about trying to gain notoriety or trying to, make more money. It was deeper than that. It was a lot deeper than that. I mean, there was a picture of him on the Daily Mail today with a heart, with a shirt on that said, a picture of the American flag, and it said, F you, Trump. I mean, come on. That's why I think it goes a little deeper than what we're being told.
Well, it's already known that Smollett was very tight in with the Democratic establishment. He had his picture taken with Barack Obama. Apparently, his sisters were volunteers in the Obama administration or worked in the Obama administration. He's a hardcore liberal, and so he knew all the buttons to push. But I certainly think that we should not set aside the fact that, like anybody who's a TV actor or a film actor, they always want more publicity, and even bad publicity is better than no publicity at all. And boy, Jesse, have you got a lot of publicity right now? And yeah, the more your name is known, the more money you can get paid for doing what you do. And that is a real phenomenon in Hollywood, which is why, for all their complaining and posturing, a lot of big stars do not object to having their private moments shared on those scandal sheets at the supermarket checkout lines. At least somebody's talking about them.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, what you're reading in that checkout line is more factual than what you're seeing on the TV or actually reading in newsprint. That, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Rick in Florida. And Rick, aloha. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Always enjoy your show. But I do have an issue. I want to pick a bone with you, and I want to challenge you on a statement you repeatedly make on your show. I'm offended by it, actually. You lump us moon landing truthers in with these flat earth kooks. And I'm offended, sir. I really would like a chance to debate you.
Be
on this
offended.
topic.
I don't care.
When can I get... Okay. When can I get a chance to debate you on this topic?
There's no debate. The Apollo landing sites have been imaged by foreign spacecraft. Some of those countries don't even really like us all that much. And I myself have done the experiment of bouncing the laser beams off the laser ranging retroreflectors. There's no debate here. Anyway, thank you very much for wasting our time. Let's go to Mo in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Are you familiar with this law the Senate just passed about what's considered a hanging? I'm talking about. I can't think of the number.
Lynching,
of the law.
you mean?
Lynching. Yeah.
Yeah, but lynching is already illegal. It's called murder.
Yeah. Peter Schiff just gave when this thing first came out, he was right on top of it. He said, "I think this smells like a rat," because this guy was going to get a sandwich in the middle of the night at 2:00, blah blah blah. None of it made sense. Well, now that we know it's all alive, he was tying it in with this new lynching law that they're trying to push this through. You can just spit on somebody, and if there's more than one person involved, the federal government can charge you with the lynching law. If it's a minority of any kind.
That's overkill. That is really overkill. I mean, when I hear the word lynching, I think of it's an original definition. And one of the big problems we have with our society today is they'll take a word, they'll make it illegal, then they'll change the definition of that word in order to expand its influence. It's like the way that they tried to pass laws against anti-Semitism and then expand them to include criticism of the government of Israel, which is protected speech under the First Amendment.
No, I totally agree with you. But in the law, you read off exactly what describes a lynching. You don't have to have a rope. You don't have to hang somebody. All you have to do is threaten them or touch them, and when the lynching law is defined, it falls into place for that. So it's a matter of just exactly what you said, expanding it's so bizarre, and he was tying this into the Jesse Smollett thing. That's what the other callers mentioned something about. There's got to be more to it than this, and that's exactly what I think is. I don't know, but it made total sense that they're making it just like he touched my butt, I was raped. I touched a minority, a protected species, like you call them.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm charged federally with a lynching law. And if you read the law, you fall under it. You don't have to have a rope. You don't have to string them up. You don't even have to kill them. All you got to do is touch them. I'm serious. He read the law. I haven't looked it up, but I know Peter Schiff. I followed him long enough.
Well, I hope this gets voted down, because one of the problems with all these laws that are this hypersensitive, I guess is a good word there, is it's handing very powerful tools to people willing to falsely accuse those they don't like. And it's going to ruin lives. It's going to tangle up the court system. Again, people, we have gone so far down this road of victimology.
Exactly. You're exactly right. This is just another one of those things that for the federal government, Mike, I swear to God, if me and you walking down the street and we touched a protected species, we could be charged with the lynching law. The Senate passed it, now it's into the House, and we know who controls the House. This stuff, you can't make this stuff up, Mike. This is beyond Orwellian. I mean, look up the law. Look up the bill.
Yeah.
The lynching law. Look up what defines a lynching. It has nothing to do with getting a rope and hanging some minority or whatever.
It actually goes back to a guy who was actually named Lynch.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's the origin of the word.
Whatever it is, it's just.
And from what I understand, he was a very bad man.
He probably was. Hey, quick story, okay? Real quick.
Yeah.
I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. In 1919, whatever, there was a black guy accused of raping a white woman, and they hung him, or they went to the courthouse where he was jailed. This is a fact, and they were getting ready to hang him when the mayor of Nebraska and everything was in there, or from Omaha, and my grandfather cut him down, tried to stop it and cut him down. This is a historical fact. So he's a white guy. So, they're just trying to paint everybody with a broad brush and get the blacks against the whites.
Yep.
Men against the women against the men.
Yep. That's exactly what they're doing.
Deal, Mike, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to get us just quarreling amongst ourselves. Oh, this person raped me, this person lynched me, so that we're not paying attention to what the government is doing because they're dragging us into World War III. And so far, it's not going very good, and I don't think we're going to win this one.
As long as you're on the front line there, Mike, warning people, I think we got a shot. And I keep up the good work. Thank you so much. Everybody appreciates it.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network here. I have been corrected on Jussie Smollett's pay for Empire. According to the Hollywood Reporter, he gets $125,000 per episode. So, wow, that's a lot of money. But apparently, it wasn't enough. He was well on his way to being a money junkie. Okay, now, Joe Scarborough is basically directly blaming Donald Trump over this U.S. Coast Guard Lieutenant Christopher Paul Hasson, who was arrested for being a domestic terror threat. And he was going to target Joe Scarborough and a host of Democratic lawmakers and other media figures, and apparently had quite an arsenal as well. But, oh yes, it's all Trump's fault. Trump put him up to it, because Trump is creating the climate where this kind of violence, can exist. Well, who created the climate in which things like Jussie Smollett can exist? And frankly, it's getting a little tiresome to see the corporate media, no matter what happens, it's Trump's fault. Coast Guard gets arrested, oh, it's Trump's fault. Jussie Smollett gets jumped, oh, it's Trump's fault. Jussie Smollett's story turns out to be a hoax, well, it's still Trump's fault. We've got record snow across America, that's Trump's fault too. It's amazing. All righty. Remember Jeffrey Epstein? Apparently a judge ruled yesterday that federal prosecutors, including Trump's labor secretary, Alexander Acosta, violated the law with their sweetheart plea deal with Jeffrey Epstein, in which Epstein averted federal prosecution for his participation in an international sex operation. Now, Acosta at the time was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, and he opted not to prosecute Epstein on federal sex trafficking laws and instead struck a deal that ultimately granted him immunity. And more than 30 of Epstein's victims were never notified of the arrangement. So it looks like they're going to go back in and they're going to have an investigation. I don't know how far it's going to go because given what was going on in Epstein's Florida mansion and later on his little private castle down there in the Caribbean, I'm sure he had the place wired with cameras and microphones. He's got the goods on everybody who ever visited him. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot. If you're in public life, you'd have to be an idiot to visit someplace like that. You know you're going to get set up to be blackmailed here. All right, let's talk about the economic news now. Australia is the latest nation to start to get nervous about their gold, which is stored at the Bank of England. And like so many other countries' gold, it's supposed to be just locked in a gold vault. The gold bars have serial numbers so that when Australia gets it back, they know it's exactly what they sent to the Bank of England. But there are more and more indicators that the Bank of England may not have it all. And people in Australia are getting very, very nervous. And right now, there is no way to verify the Royal Bank of Australia's claim that it has all the gold it claims to have. And it's an interesting question to ask here because we know that Russia and China and other countries and central banks are now buying gold in record amounts. And the volume of gold they are transacting greatly exceeds the output of the world's gold mines. So where is all that extra coming from? Now, speaking of the Nord Stream 2 gas project, tensions are picking up between the United States and Germany, where the United States is saying, don't you do that. Don't you dare do business with Russia. We won't like it. And Germany has responded saying that, Germany is not the 51st United State. And we're going to do what is in our best interest in terms of our energy needs. So the Nord Stream 2 rolls on here. The USDA has come on out saying that Trump's trade war has triggered a $1.9 billion with a B plunge in farm exports. Well, we know the farm exports are plunging. I'm not sure the USDA is right to put it all on the trade war. No doubt that's had an impact. But we also have countries that are turning their backs on U.S. agricultural exports because of the GMO controversy. So we need to be fair about what's going on here. Now, Peter Schiff is this economist specializing in foreign equity, currency, and gold markets. And he's basically saying that what they're calling quantitative easing is basically debt monetization. And right now, the Federal Reserve is still dealing with the aftermath from 2008, where they were required to buy up all of these failed mortgages that went bad. And they're still sitting on the balance sheet, which is somewhere around $4 trillion. And that is a huge debt here. Over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton is out there saying that he estimates about 900,000 aliens illegally voted in the midterms. That's a lot of illegal aliens. Now, I noticed that Donald Trump was on Fox earlier today talking about the possible repeat vote for one of the state seats because they couldn't figure out that mess because our election system is a mess. And he's sitting there behind his desk at the Oval Office saying, I'm opposed to election fraud. I'm strongly opposed to. Okay, well, Donald, you had a chance to do something about it, and you disbanded your own election integrity commission. And it will cost you come 2020. That already cost you. You lost the House. And we know a big part of it was illegal immigrant voters flooding into California into key districts to swing them from just slightly red to just slightly blue. This was strategically planned. Now, as you know, Donald Trump wants to put up the wall across the southern border. He's declaring a national emergency. He's going to use unallocated military funds to do it. All of a sudden, the Pentagon is digging in their heels and saying that they need to know how building a border wall will improve the troops' effectiveness before it releases Department of Defense dollars. So now we have the Pentagon basically defying the commander-in-chief. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about, well, various issues around the world here. Over in France, they are preparing to criminalize all opposition to Israel's racist state ideology, which, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is just ecstatic over. And President Macron announced the measure Wednesday at a dinner hosted by CRIF, France's main Jewish communal organization and Israel lobby group. And Macron reiterated that anti-Zionism is one of the modern forms of anti-Semitism. In other words, criticism of the government of Israel represents hatred of the Jewish people, which is like saying that the only reason anybody bitches about the Nazis is they just naturally hate Germans. That's basically what it is. Now, in his own country, commenters are attacking Macron, saying he's just playing political theater, trying to link anti-Semitism with criticism of the actions of the government of Israel. And it is utterly ridiculous, but Macron made the declaration after a spate of what are supposed to have been anti-Semitic incidents and attacks in France, which we know that every time Israel wants a law passed that helps them out, they're going to be hoaxes. That's something that people need to realize, is how much of the world is manipulated with hoaxes. All right. Getting into the area of political correctness, there was this interesting article over at Patriot Rising talking about college course names and how they reveal how liberal universities have just become these lunatic left-wing indoctrination camps. Now, when I went to college originally, it was science, engineering. I had to take an art class. I had to take a journalism class. But it was, stuff that gave you skills that you would go on out and you would have a good life with. But apparently over at Swarthmore College, students can take Religion 032, Queering God, Feminist and Queer Theology. The course states, the God of the Bible and later Jewish and Christian literature is distinctively masculine, definitely male. Or is he? At Wellesley College, students can take a course in transnational feminisms, described as a critical engagement of transnational feminism in a global context. The course description offers a mouthful. In this course, we will explore how neoliberal globalization, human rights discourses, and an intersecting array of complexes, including those of a humanitarian nonprofit and prison industrial variety, dually shape and constrain agitations for justice across national political and technological borders and boundaries. Now, I'm not a dumb person. I have no idea what they're saying. At the University of Iowa, students can take a course in African American women, health, hair, and sexuality, which explores African American women's bodies from the exotic to the erotic and how they are constructed to fulfill a variety of personal and cultural fantasies as well as social functions. Really. Over at Northwestern University, students can take a course called Unsettling Whiteness, which preaches about white superiority. Over at Middlebury College, students can take a class called With People, which discusses the formation of whiteness as a site of privilege, aggrieved entitlement, and even a category of trash in the more recent past. At Providence College, racism is promoted further with a course called The Power of Whiteness, which correlates white people with colonialism, slavery, imperialism, and globalization, and how it suppresses cultural environments and gender sexual identity formation today. At Dartmouth College, the next generation of students can touch up on the subject of black, queer, and trans futures, an experiment which preps them for colonial dispossession, racial violence, and Kishitaro patriarchy on campus and beyond. If Dartmouth students prefer, they can take a course that examines how issues of race and sexuality are elemental to radical formulations of queer theory. And for this, these students are going $100,000 into student debt. This is complete nonsense. And this is not education. It is indoctrination. They're trying to basically bring about this liberal ideology by putting in the schools, and they're moving down. They're trying to get into the high schools. They're trying to get into the public schools. There was a lot of liberalism in the Common Core curriculum. They're brainwashing the next generation of people to fit into that liberal utopia. The problem is that they've never been able to get it to work, because they always run out of other people's money before they can get it to work. All righty, we're coming up to another commercial here, and we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and I'm going to skip on back to the international news section of our show. This just came on in. Apparently, the Ukrainian Navy is about to make a new attempt to force its way through the Kerch Strait. They have sent 2 Gurza armored boats and the Centaur assault boat, and on the Centaur is a platoon of Marines with all the armament. They're going to force a confrontation. This is much more dangerous than the previous one. And here is the point. If Ukraine simply requested Russia's permission to transit the Kerch Strait, Russia would probably agree. The only reason they're maintaining traffic control in the Kerch Strait is it's very narrow, and too much traffic would stir up too much mud and require for the channel to be re-dredged. Apparently this is all going to happen in the coming hours, may even be happening right now. Alrighty, we're going to take a phone call. Robert in London, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello. Hello, Michael. Good afternoon. I have been listening to a chap on the YouTube. That's an E. Michael Jones. I find it rather fascinating. He's very Catholic, and you could ignore a lot of sort of the Catholic stuff that he talks about. But he does talk a lot about other things and the Jewish issues and stuff. He talked about some history of Germany. I didn't know this at all. Before the First World War, there was a Bismarck. He pulled the German states together, and
Yes.
he ran Germany. This chap Bismarck, and he was he believed in the value of the workman, the skill of the workman, and he paid the workman well, and because the workmen were valued and they produced good quality products, therefore they did a lot of business, and basically Germany was overtaking Britain
Yes.
as being the industrial heart of the world, as it were, which obviously and the British and typically the Americans now, they don't value the workman. They are paying you as little as possible and giving you sort of and expecting you to work to death on little to no pay. Whereas those nations who value the workman, who pay people well, it's not about the minimum wages, it was a false economy. It's sort of paying people well and getting a good job out of them, that you can really make money and you can really grow your nation. and Perón, Juan Perón from Argentina. He was another example of somebody who grew the Argentinian economy during the Second World War. Apparently, he provided Britain with beef. So Britain was starving, and he provided beef. And then the British refused to pay him after the war and stuff. And of course, all things go downhill after that. But I am surprised. I did not know about Germany being the sort of number one world industrial power.
Yes.
I always thought Britain was the number one industrial world power, but obviously the history is written by the winners, as we all know. And I was really surprised. I could measure now that we don't pay people and we don't get a good job, and if we all produce cheap products, and everything goes downhill. If only you could value.
Yeah, you're absolutely right here, and
be happy and build things up.
Yeah, and the same situation existed leading to World War II as well. After the Nazis took over, they kicked out the private central bank. They came up with a value-based currency that did not accrue interest to anybody. And Germany's economy exploded. It was called the German Miracle. Time magazine made Adolf Hitler their man of the year in 1937 for the amazing job he'd done with the economy. And Germany began to reindustrialize. And once again, they became this manufacturing powerhouse. And part of the reason was that, people had a strong sense of wanting to do a good job. Plus, they had excellent education. It was almost a stereotype of the German scientist, how highly educated and skilled they were. And so that was one of the forces that led to World War II as well. Now, as far as treating workers well, we don't have to look all that far back to see that. Henry Ford believed in treating his workers well. He paid them well enough where they could actually afford to buy the cars they were building. And he had a saying that the best way to become prosperous is to see that your community around you prospers. And it's a little bit of wisdom that has certainly been forgotten in this very mercenary, money junkie age.
Sure. If I may just say, I used to work for the hotel chain, the Marriott Hotel.
Yes.
And for the first part of my work, they believed in paying you well for your work, etc. And it was a good job, and I enjoyed working there. Then afterwards, they obviously you get taken over by subsidiaries, and of course, then it's sort of we're not paying you and all the rest of it, reducing wages and what have you, and of course the job just goes to rubbish.
Yes.
And I mean, you can see these things, so why not pull your sock? Why not the boss pull his socks up and know what to do right? But they want the money in their pocket only.
Well, it's not just that.
Thank you very much.
They're having to pay. Everything is funded on credit. They got to pay the bankers back along with the interest, and the bankers are just out there saying,
Sure.
"Squeeze more money out because we want more." The prime rate is going up, and it's a machine
Sure.
to basically suck wealth out of the general population. But in a mature economy, for one thing, if you're paying your workers decent wages and salaries, where are they going to take that money? They're going to spend it back into that economy to keep it going. And it's amazing to see all
Sure.
of these large corporations who have gone to automation or who have offshored manufacturing or outsourced office jobs to call centers in India. And they're standing around wondering why all of our iconic retailers are starting to collapse.
Absolutely. They should all know this stuff, But it's like, why do people take heroin? It's complete. It's destructive, but people do, and they destroy themselves. Why is always a good question.
Well, money's addictive. There was a documentary that
Absolutely.
came out after 2008 called Inside Job, and in it they reported on how scientists had actually wired up the brains of stock traders with brain scanners and discovered that every time they made a bunch of money, the part of the brain that lit up was exactly the same part of the brain that lights up when you do cocaine. And so, yeah, acquisition of money literally becomes an addiction, and it's very, very destructive.
I've been listening to your program long enough that I know how many times you give me all the examples you've given me. I know exactly how many. I don't know exactly, but I mean, I know all your examples. You explained them so many times because I listen to your program all the time. So, thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
It was nice to talk to you.
Well,
I'll let go. Thank you very much.
Nice to talk to you too, and we're going to let you go here. And the phone lines are open now. Okay. Over in Connecticut, in their state capitol building, there is this wooden sign, piece of artwork depicting the pro-police thin blue line flag. And it's been taken down out of concern it might offend the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, here's an interesting story. Jamie Shoup of Oregon was the first person in the United States to legally identify as neither gender. And it was a big stink, lawyers, all kinds of court decisions, and basically the so-called non-binary gender identification. And he's had a complete change of heart. He's saying it's a total fraud, this non-binary gender identification. And he said, I've always been male. And so he wants to go back to identifying as male and basically saying, in my 30-plus year marriage, I am the husband. To my daughter, I am her father. And I no longer identify as a transgender or non-binary person, and I will not be a party to advancing harmful gender ideologies that are ruining lives, causing deaths, and contributing to the sterilization and mutilation of gender-confused children. Well, good for him. We have been hearing a lot about transgender regret. And because the media is so heavily liberal, they don't want to talk about it. They're still selling the idea that renouncing your birth gender and being something else in the middle, any one of 64 different gender identifications, is the new thing. It's just to keep us all confused. Keep us all so befuddled that we can't think clearly about what the government is up to. There's been an interesting development over at the in Great Britain at the Ecuadorian embassy. Apparently, Julian Assange has managed to get a new passport. Now, his old one had expired, and there was a lengthy approval process that had to be carried out through lawyers. But apparently, he did get his new passport. This raises the question of whether Australia is finally going to step on in and intervene to protect one of its own citizens. And I'll tell you what, since we're coming up on hour 3 in the Lady Claire, I want to skip on down to human-caused global warming, because the other stuff can wait till Monday here. Over in Flagstaff, they have broken their all-time snowfall record. And apparently they literally got 35.9 inches of snow before midnight. This breaks the previous all-time record that was set back in 1915. Now, the city last night declared a state of emergency, and apparently this snowstorm is still going on, and it's burying the southwestern United States. And this, of course, the previous storm is still wreaking havoc all over the East Coast here. Alrighty, a top advisor to former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, Maurice Newman, has just declared that global warming is a conspiracy, yeah, we know, pushed by the United Nations as part of their plan to establish a new world order. Well, I have been saying that for years, that the push for global government was going to rest on 3 pillars. And the first one was global warming, requiring us to surrender our freedom and sovereignty to a global environmental authority. The second was going to be a global pandemic, requiring us to surrender our sovereignty to a global health authority. That one flopped rather badly in 2009 with the When Pigs Fly flu. And the third was going to be a global economic crash, requiring a new global financial authority. That one does seem to still be on track. But again, think about how much of what you think you know about the world is being done with hoaxes, because that's exactly what global warming was all about. And by the way, with all of this record-setting snow all over the country, with snow coming down to lower altitudes than it has in decades or in all of recorded history as it did down in Maui, corporate media is still out there with, well, you know, NASA and NOAA are saying that 2018 was the fourth hottest year on record. And, you know, we're still going to get a lot hotter. And global warming is why the world is cooling. They're still out there trying to sell that limit. I guess they're counting on the majority of people being Common Core graduates and not being able to actually think these things through. Over at the Western Journal, they've got an article just denouncing the media hysteria and pointing out that all these records claiming high temperatures are data manipulation. And we have caught them manipulating data. For one thing, over the last several years, NOAA shut down all their temperature monitoring stations in the cooler rural areas and started building their data from temperature stations inside the cities, which are much warmer. You've got what's called the urban heat island effect. You've got the pavement, which is reflecting sunlight, that's hot. You've got the outflow from air conditioners, that's hot. In our ClimateGate page, we've actually got a photo of a U.S. government weather monitoring station situated right next to a trash incinerator. I wonder what kind of temperatures they get from that. And a lot of these claims about record high temperatures across the country, if you actually locate where the temperature monitoring station is, you generally find it's in the middle of an airport, surrounded by jet planes belching burning kerosene fumes. That's not an honest way to get temperature measurements. Now, remember what I said before about indoctrination. Senator Edward J. Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, is responsible for a bill that aims to indoctrinate kids in school with climate change propaganda. The bill's co-sponsors include 3 aspirants for the Democratic nomination for president: Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. The other 5 are Benjamin L. Cardin, Dianne Feinstein, Patty Murray, Jean Shaheen, Chris Van Hollen. The bill is Senate Bill 2740, Climate Change Education Act. The bill would authorize the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to establish a climate change education program, and NOAA would spread grant money to schools via state and local agencies. In other words, we'll give you money if you'll teach your kids that humans are warming the earth. This is indoctrination. It's not education. They're still pushing this. And you would think, after so many record-setting winters that we've had, remember back in 2000, snowfalls are a thing of the past. And by the way, looking at what's happening in Flagstaff right now, I have some very strong words for Puxatawny Phil. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Getting into the world of computers and electronics. Apparently, the U.S. government wants researchers to use artificial intelligence and GPS trackers to predict risky behavior. I mean, this is right out of Minority Report. And apparently the National Institute for Justice, the research arm of the Department of Justice, has published an advertisement for a grant seeking proposals for projects that deploy artificial intelligence to reduce recidivism among 5 million people under the control of parole and probation across the United States. So apparently, at least for the immediate future, this is intended for paroled prisoners and not the general population here. All right, we're going to take a phone call from John in Austin. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael, you're talking about climate change there.
Yes.
I heard a guy on NPR the other morning, real early, because I go to bed at night listening to the BBC on NPR, so I wake up to them. And this guy was, what I need to do is, can you give me an email address or something that I can share this with you, because you need to hear this. This guy was just off the charts crazy.
Yeah, well, if you go to my website, whatreallyhappened.com.
I tried that, Mike, and I couldn't find anything to get this into.
Well, basically, right underneath the green bar at the top, there's a very thin white bar, and right in the middle of it, it says email WRH. What really happened?
Okay. All right, I'll look again. Now, I suggest when you sit down and listen to this, you have a large glass of Scotch whiskey with you, okay?
All right, I'll take your advice. Thanks an awful lot.
Enjoy it.
All right, I will. Okay, we're going to switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
This North Korean summit. Everybody's talking about, North Korea is not going to get rid of its nuclear weapons, so the whole thing's a big failure. And I don't think it is at all. I mean, personally, I don't get that bent out of shape about countries having nuclear weapons. I think it actually prevents war. It's kind of like gun control. People should have guns, and it prevents people from abusing them.
Yes.
And it's the same way with nations. Nobody's going to invade North Korea if it has nuclear weapons. And I'm just glad that the President of the United States can sit down with the head of North Korea, and they can have dinner, and they can talk as friends, and they can get their pictures taken and shake each other's hands and pat each other on the back. I mean, 2 years ago, it was not that situation with North Korea. They were launching missiles over Japan, and they had hostages. So there's been a lot of improvement, everybody's
it's all concessions by North Korea, and the reason things are stuck now is North Korea is waiting for the United States to do something to reciprocate, and the United States won't. The U.S. attitude is, you give us everything that we want first, then we'll do something nice for you. It's a negotiating position they picked up from the Israelis.
Well, no, I've heard Trump saying the other day, I can wait on the nuclear weapons for a while. I mean, so I think I agree.
That's because he knows he's not going to get them, and he's trying to save face. Anyway, listen, Joe, got to let you go. Got to do station identification. We'll be back with the lovely Lady Claire after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire. And Lady Claire, what's the first thing you want to talk about?
The first thing I want to talk about before I get into what's up on my notes is this atmosphere on the mainland of horrible disjunctness, if one could say that. People not talking over ideas, but feeling it's perfectly fine to punch someone who does not believe the way you do.
Yes.
This is really dangerous. I know you saw this with me, but there was a video taken of a young conservative at UC Berkeley.
Yes.
And getting pounded on by this liberal who doesn't apparently understand how to sit down and talk an issue through.
What was really funny is the liberal was screaming, "You're promoting violence on this campus. You're promoting violence on this campus."
As he's hitting the kid again and again. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I hope that we can have some leadership at every level that will say, guys, we're all in this together. So please, sit down, grab some herbal tea, and let's talk.
Well, you need to understand all of this is deliberate. It's designed to basically get the American people just so hypersensitive and easy to offend that we're constantly arguing and scrambling with each other and with all this transgenderism, we're just sort of befuddled. We don't know what restroom we're supposed to be using. And all of it is to prevent us from thinking clearly so that we can think clearly about the path this nation is on.
Absolutely.
Which is clearly the war path.
Yeah, I know that very much concerns me. And with things that you've been reading and posting and things that I have been reading and posting, yes, it looks like that. You know, again, there are moments when I'm very grateful that we live on Oahu, because even with my friends from
look, there's
church,
a nuclear missile on its
stop
way.
it. Even with my friends who have very different beliefs on a lot of things, particularly political, we could sit down, have a cookie, some milk, and talk about it. But, you know, being that I am a Christian pacifist activist, there are moments when I think back to the mainland may not be such a good idea, you know?
Well, I think that 3,000 miles of ocean
Yes.
Does give us a little bit of emotional distance from what's going on the mainland.
Yeah.
And, you know, water can do that. I experienced that when I was a rag setter off the coast of California.
Right.
And even on that Mississippi riverboat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a little strange. Mike, have you been reading much about the arrest of this alleged terrorist? And the guy turned out to be a white nationalist Coast Guard officer.
Yes.
And again, I'm befuddled. How can you hate people enough to want to go kill them all? And I mean, what happens to a mindset like that? Do we know if he was on any kind of antidepressant of any kind?
I would certainly like to know that, but again, that's information that is now being filtered from the public discourse,
right? Because
the pharmaceutical corporations don't want you to know these medicines are dangerous.
Absolutely.
Even though if you read the package inserts on the antidepressants, there's a little warning in microscopic print, you know, to save shipping costs, we are told, that says, this stuff can cause you to flip on out and murder your entire town and then commit suicide.
And in this article from Blacklisted News, it made an observation that I wanted to kind of share with you. And that is that the Trump administration's silence fits pattern. And there was a study last year by Washington-based Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, and it demonstrated that the Justice Department was 6 times more likely to issue press releases in alleged plots that involved Muslims than non-Muslims.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah, you know, it's like, hello. My goodness. The next place I want to talk about is the UAE, the United Arab Emirate. And they have just signed a sweet $5.5 billion with a B in military contracts as, well, it says here that the Yemen war is getting heightened scrutiny. It's not by the people who are making the money. Not at all. You know,
sure it is. They're looking at and saying, how can we get more money for this?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the majority of awards went to Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, which sealed one of the biggest deals with a $7 billion dirhams worth of contracts. And it's related to its Patriot missile defense system. Now, in the Gulf area, the states that have been buying U.S. weapons are UAE and Saudi Arabia. And also, the UAE has awarded deals to firms from Russia, Turkey, Pakistan, South Africa, and the 5-day IDEX military exhibition. You know, as someone who generally loves people, don't want to see people hurt in any way, I am very concerned about the degree to which the U.S. military has become complicit with the Saudis and Emiratis in this horrific battle for Yemen. And, well, you've seen the pictures that I put up.
Oh, yeah. The pictures are horrific. I mean, all wars are horrific.
Yeah, but to see children that malnourished in this 21st century, it's criminal, Mike. It's criminal. And we are the bad guys right now.
Yeah, I'm afraid that we are.
Yeah.
And it's not like somebody can go on in and say, well, if we just give those children food, they'll be okay. No. When you are going through important developmental stages of childhood and you're malnourished, the effects will linger for your entire life.
Yeah. I know. And I have to wonder how many more lives this country is going to be involved in destroying before they maybe take a switch, a turn in the way that they're doing things.
Well, unfortunately, as long as money is driving the process and we have money junkies calling the shots in government and corporations, I'm afraid we are headed down a path to where we're going to have to, as a planet, as a world, learn a very, very hard lesson. And out of those ashes may arise something that appears to be civilized. But yeah, I'm afraid we're heading for a new dark ages. Okay, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And what is your next story?
The next story I've got is about Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He's on his road show to develop some sort of relationship with the rest of the world after the Khashoggi murder. And he has pledged to India over $100 billion US in aid.
Okay.
Now, how does that seem to make a logical relationship for him? I would think that he would be much more inclined to go with Pakistan. What do you think?
Well, India-Pakistan is about to go into play.
Yeah.
It looks like, I mean, they've sort of been at this very low-intensity war for a very long time over Kashmir, and India has been losing ground in Kashmir.
Yeah.
And I think Pakistan is just saying, you know, enough with the fooling around, let's just get it over and done with. The risk, of course, being that both India and Pakistan are nuclear-armed nations.
Right, right. And there was an article that I looked at from the Times of India which indicates how close this is getting to actual warfare, that the Pakistanis have ordered their medical field people right next to the border where the war they think is going to break out.
That's a bad sign.
That's a really bad sign.
That's a really bad sign.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The next thing I want to talk about is this China's social credit system. And the article asked self-referentially, is this a beast of the coming, is this a preview of the coming beast system? And in China now, everything you do, online and offline, monitored, tracked, or recorded by someone. Now, can you imagine what life would be like if people from the government compiled all that information into a giant database and used it to punish those who have engaged in politically incorrect behavior?
Well, I thought they were already doing that. That's why we're getting deplatformed.
Yes, well, they're doing it here that way. But in China, apparently they are cracking down on a much wider group of online and offline activities. For example, if you fail to make a credit card payment, get into an argument in public, or say the wrong thing on social media, you could find yourself restricted to conducting a whole host of normal economic activities you will not be able to do again. And the primary marketing slogan for this credit system is once discredited, everywhere restricted. They're not going to be able to travel.
Yeah, well, forget what I said about wanting to visit China.
Okay,
All
right. And it's very, very interesting out there. Now, Mike, it looks like President Xi of China and President Trump of the U.S. Are going to be meeting next month, probably at Mar-a-Lago, to try to get the trade situation back on track.
Yes.
Now, what do you think both countries are going to have to do to get it to a point where both the U.S. and China believe that they have won with these negotiations?
Well, I would like to see a win-win situation come on out, but so far during his presidency, Trump doesn't seem interested in win-win. He wants win for the U.S., win for himself, which is part of that whole Make America Great Again situation. But he's not understanding how this aggressive, bullying, us-first approach is rapidly turning the rest of the world against us.
Oh, yeah. I've seen a lot of evidence about that.
If he doesn't resolve this trade situation with China soon, China is simply going to stop bothering trying to trade with the United States, and they're
Mhm.
going to find other trading partners. I notice they're cozying up to Iran right now.
Oh yeah, well the Silk and Trade Road, isn't
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the way China is going about this, which seems to me pretty positive, is inviting and encouraging people to work together, to come to the dance, to find a way of resolving differences that don't involve a bomb
Yes.
or a gun. I think that's pretty creditable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the attitude we have from our government is
Mhm.
negotiations can go either way, but bombs make everything final.
I think you're right. I think we had sort of this conversation last Friday when we were talking about people in the U.S. government thinking that it was cheaper to kill the opposition than try to learn to compete.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Well, you know, we're coming from that one area of strength that the U.S. has.
Mhm.
We still make pretty decent weapons,
Yep.
ignoring the F-35, the
Yes.
Zumwalt, the Gerald R. Ford, the
Et cetera,
F-22,
yeah.
the Independence-class littoral combat
Yep.
ships, the Freedom-class littoral
Mhm.
combat ships. But we do make great bombs.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I thought this was interesting regarding YouTube. Apparently, major companies are pulling YouTube ads following report of a soft-core pedophile ring you could get into using the system. And they have pulled these adverts on YouTube, and this is following a report that the comment sections on the site have been used to facilitate a soft-core pedophile ring. You know, and Bloomberg noticed on Wednesday that Walt Disney Company has joined Nestle and video game maker Epic Games in pulling advertisers from YouTube. And a YouTuber by the name of Matt Watson uploaded a video explaining how YouTube comment sections are used to identify and share exploitative videos of young girls. This is so sick, Mike.
Yeah, it is.
You know, absolutely, completely ill. I don't understand it, except as a way of, let's say, exerting power over someone who can't really fight back very well. And we've been talking about Venezuela. I know you have.
Yes.
And what happened here, there were so far 2 dead, 14 injured, and Venezuelan soldiers opened fire on civilians near the Brazil border. Now, in Zero Hedge, what these indigenous people were trying to do was to keep the path from the border between Brazil and Venezuela open for potential food contributions. And,
well, again,
yeah.
we have to be very, very careful because we know that when the United States is targeting a country, we can expect all kinds of lies,
Yeah.
fraud, and deception. And again, let's go on back and look for the piece that should be there
Yeah.
and isn't. The reason there is supposedly a humanitarian disaster taking place in Venezuela, which, according to Max Blumenthal's video, doesn't seem to really exist. He
Okay.
found all the supermarkets there
Stuffed.
are full. Yeah, they're stuffed.
Yeah.
They've got fewer empty shelves than our local Safeway.
Wow, okay.
And so we know that the U.S. is going to put out all kinds of demonization of Maduro, always starving his own people.
Yeah.
So what would be the sense in the United States throwing all these sanctions on Venezuela that put the Venezuelans into starvation, then turn around and try and send in food aid? And I think Maduro's concern is that what is in those trucks is not food for the Venezuelan people,
No.
but supplies for paramilitary groups to be used to attack him, in which case he's perfectly justified in sending tanks to stop it. Now, those indigenous people there at the border, maybe they fell for the idea that it was humanitarian aid. I question whether the Venezuelan soldiers would have opened fire on them. After all, they are in tanks. They don't need to shoot at them.
Yeah.
But there could have been a U.S. sniper there picking off civilians.
That's possible too. That's possible
and as
too.
I told this caller earlier in the show, remember when they were doing the coup d'etat in Kiev, where they had snipers on the roof that were just shooting in both directions.
Yeah.
It didn't care, who they were killing as long as the bodies piled up and were blamed on Yanukovych.
And also in a companion story, and this comes from Sputnik. And Sputnik is usually one of the online blogs I like to read because the truth is a little straighter, I've got to tell you, I'm sorry, than most American, what stands for journalism today. And what they are saying is that the U.S. is now transferring special troops weapons close to Venezuela. And the Russian foreign minister said that if these efforts are implemented, it would dramatically increase the level of tension and confrontation in the world, particularly in Venezuela. And it's coming to a very critical point. A dangerous large-scale provocation is about to take place. This would be a false flag issued by Washington-led crossing of the Venezuelan border with a so-called humanitarian convoy, which may lead to clashes between supporters and opponents of Maduro, forming a convenient pretext for military action to neutralize the current President Maduro.
And that's going to happen tomorrow.
Why tomorrow?
It said February 23rd.
Oh, that's right.
Today's the 22nd.
Yes, okay.
See my iWatch?
Yes, dear, it's lovely. Thank you. I did not see that quite quickly enough.
Okay.
And very interesting about Elon Musk, he is leveraging the loans that he has on his home out to $50 million, mortgaging 5 homes that he has. And, you know, I have with this gentleman a hug and a very gentle tap on the shoulder relationship. I believe he's one of the most brilliantly gifted guys around, but sometimes he will let himself go out on a tangent that can't really be sustained by science. And I wish he had a better minder when it came to business, because the brilliance I get, but, you know, just this horrible business sense all wrapped up in this genius.
Well, you know, he is a genius, and SpaceX is certainly going great. They had a successful launch this morning with multiple satellites.
Yeah.
One of them is Israel's first moon lander.
I noticed that, yes.
Yeah, so good for them.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess what he's trying to do is he's trying to raise money to deal with Tesla. And I think if there's one fault of Elon Musk is that he couldn't stay focused on one thing.
Yeah.
And he just jumps around a lot. I wish he would think about selling off Tesla and put his focus on SpaceX, because he's capable of not only making a successful company, he's making history over there.
Yeah, that would be the winner.
Yeah.
That would be the winner. Now, apparently...
Okay, we got to take a break for commercials.
All right.
And we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And kind of interesting, we're looking at the Fox News feed, and they're talking about the church crisis with child sexual abuse. And they're saying all the right words. Well, we're going to be more transparent, blah, 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 blah. But you know something? Every time this comes out, and not just the Catholics, but any church where they're hit with a scandal like this, there are always promises they'll do something to fix it. The problem still continues. So I don't have a lot of
hope,
faith that the Pope is going to do anything about it. Oh, there it is right there, the SpaceX rocket.
Okay, good.
And what's really cool about this Israeli moonlander, I feel like I want to throw a couple of words in here. It's privately funded.
That's cool.
Just a bunch of philanthropists got together and they put together this project, and it's up there and it's on its way to the moon. And I think it's going to touch down sometime in April. And wow, good for them. And of course, then we'll be getting all these phone calls from people saying, oh, the Israeli moon landing never really happened. It's a fake. Please. It was shot in a studio in Tel Aviv.
You had one of those earlier today,
I had
did you
one
not?
of those earlier.
Yeah.
You know, trying to take us off topic.
Right. Well, just when you think the Dementocrats, I've my new name for the Democrats, the Dementocrats, cannot get a little bit more squirrely, they induced a resolution to overturn Trump's national border emergency.
And what's really alarming is apparently a lot of GOP senators are saying they're going to vote for it.
This is complete insanity. Folks, we have a typhus epidemic in LA.
Yes.
And that we've had diseases come through our states which we thought we had eradicated.
Yes.
And it's courtesy of the illegals. I'm sorry, I hate to say that, but yeah, you know, and we have to do something. And Mike, can the Democrats actually legally do this?
I'm not sure that they can. I mean, it's within the authority of the president to declare a national emergency, but their position is, oh, come on, illegal immigration isn't a national emergency. It's way overblown, and we're going to stop the president from this incredible, wasteful spending of money that should be going to Israel anyway in the first case.
And the funny thing about that is none of these people who were voting to oppose and stop the wall live anywhere close to the urban danger zones.
No, they don't. In fact, a lot of them live on very comfortable houses which have their own walls.
Yes, Maxine Waters, I believe.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, walls are good for us, but bad for you.
Yeah.
And, meanwhile, of course, U.S. taxpayer dollars are being used to build walls all over the Middle East, including Israel, Jordan, Syria.
Yeah.
But you can't have a wall on the southern border because those Democrats are desperate for illegal immigrants to be able to vote in the 2020 elections.
Yeah.
And Trump had... Once again, he was on TV earlier today talking about how he's opposed to election fraud here. Well, one of the biggest frauds taking place is the illegal immigrant vote. And to recap, Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch said their estimate is at least 900,000, just under 1 million illegal immigrants voted in the midterm elections. That may have cost Trump the House of Representatives.
I agree.
And it's time for the guy to walk his talk. It's time for the guy to put on his presidential brass knuckles and say, I'm going to fix this thing.
Yeah, I agree. He's got to come out strong. He's got to come out resolute and say, folks, this is a problem. Even here on Oahu, people get dumped.
He's saying it's a problem. And we, the American people, know it's a problem.
Right.
But there are vested political interests that want those borders kept open.
Yep.
Part of it is for the election fraud aspect. The other part of it, of course, is this push to globalize us all, to blend all the world's population together in the theory that we're all going to just sit around, hug each other, and sing Kumbaya, which certainly was not what happened over in Europe.
No,
and it's not happening here either.
No, it's not. And, even here, I don't know about Oahu per se, but in Los Angeles, there are some no-go zones, and you had better know what they are before you get out in your car or walking in a specific area, because you can get hurt, robbed, or worse.
Yes. Well, after the sun goes down on the far side of Kamehameha, that's someplace I wouldn't take you.
No, I understand that. I do understand that. Are we about to take another break? Or?
We have about 30 seconds here.
Go ahead.
Well, basically, this immigration situation, it's ridiculous. No nation in the history of the world has ever just opened up its borders to other nations and said, come on in. It's never happened before. And yet you've got people like Maxine Waters who are out there saying that if you're in favor of the wall, you can't be a patriot. You don't love America if you think there should be a border wall. Actually, the reason I want a border wall is because I do love America, the nation and its people, not so much the government. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And what is your next story?
Why the S-300s in Syria are not being used against Israeli aircraft. Now, Mike, there have been a lot of questions as to why this has happened, but they haven't fired in anger at Israeli aircraft encroaching on airspace and launching ordnance against a variety of targets. On the one hand, the S-300 in Syria operate under a handicap, if you will, of operational and political restrictions. But that being said, it would be a mistake to believe that just because missiles are not being launched, that the weapons in question are effective. And one of the things that... Ineffective, sorry, yes. One of the things that Israel does is to use human shields to cover their operation. And what they'll do is they will use civilian air traffic and U.S.-led coalition operations to shield their aircraft against Syrian air defenses. And it's interesting because Russian cruise missile strikes, for example, are invariably preceded by international notifications and closures of relevant airspace in order to prevent a catastrophe.
Yes.
And Israel just won't do that. It's just going to haul off and hit whoever it thinks needs hitting, you know. But I have to wonder if the Israelis are thinking about a false flag to get Russia to go in and be fighting with Russia and with the U.S. fighting with Israel against Syria and Russia. What do you think?
Well, you're absolutely right here. I mean, but Israel's goal is not to directly engage in war themselves. I mean, they're really good at standoff, throwing missiles in.
Yep.
I think Israel actually has a grand strategic plan of letting the United States and Russia destroy each other. And that would leave Israel with its undeclared nuclear arsenal de
And
facto,
the oil.
basically in charge of all the oil of the Middle
Yeah.
East, and through that oil in charge of the rest of the world.
You know, I think I see in Putin a lot of reserve in terms of what he does, but I think when he opens his mouth and says something, that he means it. Remember when he said the other day, if you want another Cuban Missile Crisis, I will be delighted to get that for you.
Yeah, in the last few days, his reserve has kind of slipped, and he's starting to talk tough.
Yeah. And I am hoping that there is going to be a real resolution of Syria very quickly now that the Syrian army has gotten most of the jihadists out with Russian and Iranian help.
Yes.
And I mean, is anyone talking to each other about maybe sitting around a table and coming up with a reasonable way of getting Syria back on its feet? Because its infrastructure has been bombed to the ground, Mike.
Well, this is part of the tension between the United States and Russia, because part of the way the United States makes money on these wars is they'll take your tax money, they'll give it to the defense contractors, they'll go blow up a country, then they'll offer to go in with what's called reconstruction, which means U.S. banks will then lend money to this country that's been shattered, usually at high interest rates. That country then is encouraged to hire American contractors and businesses to come on in and do the reconstruction. And that's where the U.S. makes some money on the back end of the whole deal.
Right.
It's often a very raw deal for the country in question. In fact, I remember a story in the aftermath of the Iraq War, where as part of reconstruction, the U.S. Was building a police station, and it wasn't even completed before the part that had been built first started to literally fall down.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of that with projects in the Middle East because people are charging exorbitant fees for their people to be there. And they're doing what's called in construction an ad alternate. In other words, if the architect spec'd out something that was very strong, they go down a couple of pegs. They value engineer these projects, and it's no wonder that they do fall apart.
And it's like in these countries, if there is a building code, it's not like they can enforce it against the United States.
Yeah. And here was another thing of, you can't make this stuff up, Mike. Apparently, Vice President Mike Pence will go to Colombia to demand that Maduro step down. I read that headline and I thought, they've got to be kidding. This has to be The Onion. It wasn't The Onion, folks. Apparently, he's going to Colombia on Monday to speak with the Colombian president and regional leaders about the ongoing turmoil for which the United States is very responsible, and rally the international community behind opposition leader Juan Guaido. The White House said
he's not rallying these other countries. He's basically going on in to offer them the necessary bribes to get them to come over.
Blackmail.
Yeah.
These 14 countries are part of the Lima Group in Bogota about addressing the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela and U.S. ongoing efforts to deliver aid to the country. And he's meeting with the Colombian president, Ivan Duque, and other officials from the Western Hemisphere to define concrete steps that support the Venezuelan people in a transition to democracy. Please, Mike.
Well, in this case, democracy means you vote for the people we want you to vote for.
I mean, I have heard you say on many occasions that the Venezuelan electoral system is pretty bulletproof. Better than ours.
Yeah, I mean, Maduro won his last election last year. There were international observers. They said it was very transparent. It was verifiable. And as far as they could tell, it was pretty much an honest election system. But that's not what the United States means by democracy. What the United States means by democracy is the people we like get into office, either through war or through massive election fraud.
Right. And I'm kind of wondering about that Russian date of the 23rd, if Mike Pence is only going to be in Colombia on the following Monday. I think it's the 25th.
Yes.
I think the timing might be a little bit jagged there. If Pence is going to talk to these people on Monday and Tuesday, what do you think?
Well, we'll see. I mean, there may be, multiple groups running multiple operations with the idea that the first one that succeeds, we're going to go with that.
Yeah. But I'm very concerned for the Venezuelan people. And I just hope that whatever happens with an absolute minimum of violence and bloodshed, because this is the kind of thing that can go absolutely south if it is not handled intelligently and well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, from their point of view, they're handling it the best that they can. I keep on going back to that movie, The Post.
Yes.
And I love that scene where Katharine Graham is confronting McNamara and saying, you lied and your process was flawed. And he's saying, well, we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah.
And again, I highly recommend that movie. If you've not seen it, it's on cable right now. It's called The Post, directed by Steven Spielberg. And it's a retelling of the Pentagon Papers story from the point of view of the Washington Post. Although, to be historically accurate, the New York Times was really at the center of the firestorm.
Okay. Alrighty. Have you talked about Syria in the early segments of your show?
Just a little bit.
I'd like to talk a little bit more because, I am not ready for the Aiea home for the thoroughly bewildered, but these contingency plans for Syria make no sense. Now, earlier it was planning to downsize in the north of Syria to 200 peacekeepers, but would not detail plans about the Al-Tanaf base, which is located in a very geographically central part of Syria, where it borders Jordan and Iraq. Now, all of a sudden, it's leaping to 400 American troops to be part of a total force of 800 to 1,500 Western soldiers in Syria, with the rest provided by the U.S.'s European allies. What in the name of heck are they smoking out there, Mike? It seems like the plan is no plan whatsoever.
No, the plan is to stage another fake chemical weapons attack on women and children and make one more try to go after Assad.
Okay, alrighty. That just doesn't make sense. And I have a feeling that if the U.S. really goes in and tries to do that, that's going to be the start of a war with Russia, which I'd really like to see us kind of avoid.
Which I think is coming on. But I mean, with the pullout from the INF, what the U.S. is planning on doing is putting nuclear missiles in Europe to wave at Russia to say, you don't get in our way as we pick off all these other countries on Earth.
Yeah. Well, Russians have recently upgraded their facilities in Kaliningrad, didn't they?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Well, I imagine they're upgrading pretty much everything here. And one of the ways Putin is talking tough is saying that basically you aim weapons at us, we're going to aim weapons at you. And we're back to that Cold War insanity.
Yeah, I remember that. I lived through that.
Yeah, so did I here. And there were some near misses, especially during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And when you add to that the dimension of the computerization of these weapons and how software is often deployed without really being rigidly tested anymore. I mean, it was a software glitch that led the USS Vincennes to accidentally shoot down that Iranian passenger jet. And also for the accidental shoot down of TWA 800. So if you have software of that quality, basically in control of these missiles, we could have a nuclear war on our hands before any humans could possibly move to intervene.
That could be a really nasty situation.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, the adults in the room And I do believe Mr. Putin is an adult in the room.
I think he's the only one.
Yeah, well, Sergei Lavrov,
Yes.
he's
Yeah.
always listening to find a way to create consensus. Now, part of my problem with Donald Trump's presidency is that he sort of is consensus schmensus. You do it my way or it's the highway. And you can't negotiate internationally about that at that kind of level. It just turns the other people off.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
I mean, the other countries are seeing the United States as merely handing out arbitrary instructions.
Mhm.
Okay, we have a caller on the line here, so
Okay.
we're going to take a phone call. Joe in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Joe, are you there?
Oh, hello
Hi.
there, Mike.
Yeah, there we are. What's on your mind
Okay,
today?
I was trying to make a bad joke. I said, "Is this the guy who's married to Claire?"
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
I'm Mr. Claire here. That's what the choir
Kinda like
calls
that
me.
Oh,
Kennedy-
stop it.
That Kennedy-esque joke that he made when he was in Paris.
Yes.
The man who accompanied Jackie. Claire, how's the back feeling?
It's better. I still have to be a little careful, but I would say that the trajectory is very good.
Yes.
Yeah, so
There
it's
has
good.
been
Thank
a noticeable
Okay.
improvement this last month.
Yeah. So what else
Okay, I
did you
can
want to
empathize.
talk about?
Yeah, I can
Oh.
empathize with you because I had a degenerative disc
Oh,
diagnosed
man,
many years
that's
ago.
awful. Yeah.
So so it's been pretty good. But I just have to be careful with the heavy weights when I'm in the
Yes.
gym. Mike and Claire, I wanted to ask. I'm wondering why we haven't seen any Latin American leaders step forward, a la Oscar Arias from Costa Rica, who basically came up with that agreement to end the war in Nicaragua, the Arias peace plan. I guess it's very frustrating. It seems like maybe there's no Latin American leader who feels independent enough to step forward in the midst of all this pressure from the empire to propose some sort of peace plan, or maybe that leader is reluctant to do so because he feels that Guaido wouldn't agree to it anyway.
Well, probably both are true, but the reality is that most of the countries in South America are under the control of the United States government. And this goes back decades, in fact, all the way back to 1973, when they overthrew the government of Chile and put in Pinochet, the dictator.
Right.
So, yeah, the U.S. has been playing in South America. The U.S. government's attitude is South America is our backyard. And so they go down there and they mess around with all these countries, and most of them are under U.S. control. Venezuela has been a lone holdout, and that's probably another reason why they just decided it's time to get them in line and make sure that all of South America is now a U.S. province.
Mike, did you see an update on the events? I saw it on RT. What happened at the border with Brazil? Was that accurate? 2 people dead, a dozen
We
wounded?
don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the expectation is the American people are tired of war. And so in order to sell
Absolutely.
us another war, the government's going to have to just come up with whatever lies they can where the American people say, well, we don't want another war, but we really have no choice than to do whatever. And so we're going to hear all kinds of rumors of atrocities. We're going to hear all kinds, again, think Assad and his sarin gas attacks. We're probably going to see something like
Incubators,
Oh, yeah.
incubators,
babies
that
on
kind
the
of
floor,
stuff.
and they
But
take
I think what it is they're going to make a big stink over the U.S. aid getting across the border. I mean, there's plenty of aid coming into Venezuela from Russia and China and other countries.
And Brazil, which neighbors it. Yeah.
Well, so the Brazilian aid is U.S. aid.
Okay.
They're trying to bring it in through the
I
Brazil.
don't trust
okay.
the Brazilians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Maduro does not want the U.S.
Bolsonaro,
aid
he's
coming in because he thinks it's basically intended for paramilitaries. So I think what's going to go on is they are going to try and literally crash the border and provoke a fight, and that will be the justification saying, well, now we have to go on in and remove Maduro.
All right. Well, thank you both. Have a wonderful weekend.
And you too.
All right,
for
thanks
the
an
call.
awful lot. Okay. All right, the phone lines are open again. We're coming up on our last commercial break. This next story.
Yeah, this is very scary to me. Feds are apparently investigating the cancer risks of baby powder.
Yes.
Now, we've all seen it. We know how it's used. And the Justice Department is subpoenaing Johnson & Johnson after leaked documents suggested that the talc was tainted with asbestos. Oh, heavens. And executives knew. And it's a 13,000 person class action suit. You know, that could put Johnson & Johnson out of business.
Yes, it really could.
Yeah.
Now, to be very honest here, here's the situation. Okay. Talc, of course, is a mineral.
Yeah.
And sometimes when it is mined, it is blended with asbestos. And what you're supposed to do is test the talc, and if it tests positive for asbestos, you basically don't use it.
Yeah.
But apparently, Johnson & Johnson said, yeah, let's go ahead and use it. Even though the powders tested positive for asbestos, they put it on out there. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our show on this Pauhana Friday here in Clare. What story do you have for us?
Parents in France are demanding answers after a mysterious birth defect leaves more than 20 French babies without arms. I mean, this is healthy kid, wonderful kid, not so wonderful, a lot of pain, a lot of surgery, and I have to wonder what the common thread is. And I would definitely get a a look at the common medications they share, because remember the thalidomide scandal. Oh, I sure do.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm also wondering if their version of Roundup could be doing this when women are exposed to it when they're pregnant.
Well, it's all the same version of Roundup around the globe. Monsanto has the globe. No, this is something else, and I suspect that probably the mothers were all given some kind of medication while they were carrying the babies. And the fact that it's localized in these three regions. Yeah, that's a tragedy.
Yes, absolutely.
That is a real tragedy.
I hope that the scientists and advisors are able to come up with the commonality and figure out how these kids wound up having this problem. You know.
I certainly hope so too.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So, all right. Do we have anything else here, or I should go back to my list?
I think you need to go back to your list, dear, and thank you.
All right. Donald Trump is now out there demanding that this country adopt 6G cell technology. We've all been hearing the brouhaha over 5G. And by the way, over in China, they skipped over 5G. They're going right to the 6G. And I can imagine already that the 3G and 4G providers and those who are starting to invest in 5G are now going to be screaming that 6G is horrific, it's mind control, it's going to make your hair fall out, it'll give you cancer, to scare us away from using the new one.
Yeah.
Lot of flaws, meaning security weaknesses discovered. Critical flaw uncovered in WordPress that remained unpatched for 6 years.
Whoa.
Critical flaw in WinRAR. All versions released in the last 19 years have been affected. Apparently, it can do a remote code execution right from inside an archived file.
Ouch.
That's pretty bizarre here.
Yes.
Yet another critical flaw in Drupal discovered. And
these software packages do not seem to be bulletproof at all.
Well, here's part of the problem. You literally have all these criminals around the world, intelligence agencies, that are devoting huge amounts of resources to basically trying to find ways to break into these systems, versus the original authors and companies that produce them have nowhere near that kind of budget. They're outmatched, outmanned, outprogrammed, outspent. And it would be nice if the stuff was a little more bulletproof. I mean, I remember when the home computer revolution began, what an innocent time that was. You didn't have to worry about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you went to the computer store, you bought a floppy disk with a game or an application on it, you brought it home, you used it, turned off the computer, and that was it. It was one good thing about the computers. Flip the power switch off and then on, all the viruses are gone.
Yeah.
All right. That's the music. Time for us to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got an interesting show to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with other people. Bring back the art of conversation. The internet is just getting more and more heavily filtered. They don't want you talking about conservatism or vaccines or GMO. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.